Okay, so the 12 marker on the research methods paper, just to remind you what that looks like, where it appears, very quick look, it is at the end of section B on the research methods paper. You've had your multi-choice questions there, and then you've got section B, you're given a scenario, and then it's likely to ask you to further the research that was in the scenario. How would you carry out experiments to investigate if there is a difference between language ability of people carrying out physical or non-physical tasks? They'll give you some things that you must refer to, and you must also refer to your own research. It's not always going to be an experiment, could be a self-report, could be your correlation, but you've got to refer to your own research. Okay, how does the examiner know whether you actually carried it out or not? They don't, but if you have had experience of carrying out research, then it's going to be easier for you to remember that. So let's have a look. A researcher wants to investigate the influence of memory or silent conditions on memory ability, okay, or on recall. What I suggest you do is you sketch in the exam, you sketch onto the paper a quick table that you can tick off when you've done it. So you'll have your 3 bullet points listed, and then I would sketch on this table and I would put in there what, or define, how, I can't write with the mouse, why, and then relate to study or link to your own research. That's terrible, apologies. But there you go, you can then tick off these, essentially, these boxes when you've done them. So we're going to say, for if it said design or independent measures, or if it said experiment, type of experiment or lab, what is it? You define them generally, and then how is it going to be like that in your research that you're designing? Why are you doing it in terms of a strength, and link that strength to your own research. You can mix these two up if you wanted, but there has to be a link to your own research. So let's look at an example. Independent measures, what's the definition? So you start by saying different participants experience only one condition of the IV. That's the definition of an independent measures design. Then relating it to our music and silence experiment. The IV is music or silence. Each participant is going to be exposed to 3 minutes on by James Blake or silent condition. Okay, or rather than both. So we're getting across that we know what an independent measures design is and how it's related to our studies particularly. Okay, nicely operationalized with the 3-minute song. Why? If you're using an independent measures design, it's less likely they're going to be able to guess the aim, so no order effects or demand characteristics, we could say. Unlike a repeated measure design, they only experience music or silence, not both. Okay, so we're saying a strength. Linked to your own research. In my own experiment, I found that each of my participants in our chewing gum or non-chewing gum condition could not guess I was testing their concentration, as I was only exposing them to one condition, increasing the validity of the research. Okay, so we're essentially relating to our own study here, and then we go into another issue here to make sure that we are giving a good quality strength or weakness. But there we go. Always link it to your research. Chewing gum, not chewing gum. The examiner knows that you've carried something out there. So the next one, you get the gist of this, so I'll skip through these. But lab experiments. How do you define a lab experiment? It's an IV, a DV with high levels of control over extraneous variables. How is that going to be the case in yours? Well, music and silence, the DV is this, but the controls, they're all going to be given the same list of 20 psychology related words, all given 2 minutes to learn and 1 minute to recall. So if we're getting across the fact that it is a lab experiment that has controls, then we simply say, what controls am I going to use to make it a lab experiment? Strength, standardized procedures allow replicability, which is part of the scientific process. Standardized procedures means that you increase the reliability, but linking to my own research, then the same word search out of 15 was used. Participants in the chewing gum condition were given 2 pieces of gum, therefore increasing the reliability. Okay, so we're saying what was there a control, the same word search for each participant. Sampling method, opportunity sampling, participants who are freely available to take part. Approach to, so that's the definition of the sampling method. Approach students in the LRC or in a library on a free period or a canteen in a free period to ask for consent. First 20 who consented were chosen. Unlike self-selected, this is the quickest and easiest way to find participants who are free. So we're given a strength of opportunity sampling, and then we're saying, what about my research? I approached students in a canteen one lunchtime, asked for consent to take part in a concentration experiment, and total timetable was 5 minutes. So nicely related back to research. Okay, so that's simply the way to do it. Now, what things could you get in these bullet points? What can you expect to get? Correlations. If they're asking you for a correlation, then they're likely to put on the bullet points, refer to variable 1 measurement, variable 2 measurement, because that is what you're measuring in a correlation. That's the main crux of it. So, whereas in an experiment they're likely to ask you for an IV and a DV, in a correlation they're going to be asking you to describe the variable 1 and variable 2. Types for experiments: lab, field, quasi, design, independent measures. So all of these could be a bullet. Self-reports, open and closed questions, ratings, semantic differential scales, questionnaires, interviews, observations, refer to the time and event sampling, ethical considerations, participant, non-participant, iterative reliability. Could be any of these things that you broadly associate with the 4 methods. Additionally to the 4 main research methods, you could expect your sampling methods to be one of the bullet points, or the type of data, quantitative or qualitative. What I recommend you do is pick some of these out, design your own scenario, pick one of these out or 3 of these out, and practice doing that table, and be prepared to think on your feet. Okay, because they could throw any bullet point at you, not just these. Okay, but make sure you link it back. It might be that you didn't do an independent measures design in your research. That's okay, because you can say, in my own research, I found that using repeated measures design meant that people suffered from order effects, or that it meant people suffered from demand characteristics, because they could guess that the research was about chewing gum on concentration. Okay, so just because you haven't done one of them doesn't mean that you can't still refer to the other choice that it would have been. Independent measures means you haven't chosen repeated or matched pairs. Okay, so use the documents, find some scenarios, some past scenarios, use a document on Moodle for that, and yeah, have a practice at them. Okay, thanks for listening.